Now while you're watching this video, please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon for notifications of future videos. Thank you.
Well, hello there, welcome back to my channel, guys. Yes, so today, as you can see, the title suggests, are there still prophets today? This is what we want to talk about in this video. This has been a video in the making. A subscriber of mine had requested this video for a long time now. She knows herself, right? But I'm not going to call her name, but she knows herself, a former SDA, right? She had requested it in the comment section of one of my videos, right? So now we are going to look at this subject. Are there prophets today? In a nutshell, if you should ask me, I have never met anyone who basically say they are a prophet, that I have verified for myself that they are indeed a prophet, right? I have never been through that where I can actually verify it for myself. However, where the scriptures are concerned, I can say yes without a shadow of a doubt that based on the scriptures, it is expected that the gift of prophecy will continue throughout the end of time. Now, a lot of persons who believe that the gift of prophecy has ceased, that there are no more prophets today, you call them cessationists, right? Many a times it is often stemmed, or this belief is often held because of bias, right? Now, so far, I would say that I am a continuist. Persons who believe that all the gifts still continue, they are said to be continuous. And so far, what I've seen from the Bible, I have not seen anything that suggests that certain gifts are done away. I haven't found any in the scriptures that actually say that. But let's get back to the part about the bias, why some people believe that certain gifts are done away. The reason why a lot of persons believe this is because we have a great emergence of false prophets, right? We have so many of them has come about, and they have been reigning for hundreds and hundreds of years after Christ. And even before Christ, right, they have always been false prophets throughout every generation. And so because of this is one of the reasons why persons are inclined to think that this gift is done away, because so many persons say they are prophets, and it turns out many times that they are actually false prophets. But what persons forgot is that Jesus had actually said that in the last days there will be many false prophets that will arise. Many false prophets, and people don't take this into consideration, you know, when they're taking this stance, that just because you see so many false prophets, it doesn't justify you believing that the gift of prophecy has been done away with. The very fact that Jesus tells you that there are going to come many false prophets and so forth, that alone should tell you that the gift of prophecy will actually continue throughout the end of time. If this wasn't so, Jesus would have made it specifically clear that there will come a time when many persons are going to come and say they are a prophet when the gift of prophecy has ceased. It would have been far easier for Jesus to say that, but the fact that he's telling them that they are going to come false prophet, it obviously means that naturally if there's a false prophet, there has to be a true, right? I'm going to pick up back on that point, you know, but let me show you some evidences of prophets in the New Testament after Christ. Now I'm sure that what I'm going to show, many persons who are cessationists, they will say yes, we see it throughout the apostolic era, but it ends there. That's what they're going to say now, because they can't deny that it continued after Christ, because you will see it in the book of Acts, right? Now let me show you where in the book of Acts you actually see this, right? a false prophet named Bar Jesus. He was basically called out in the book of Acts. I will put the text on the screen for you, right? There was a prophet named Agabus, Acts 21 verse 10. Basically it is said, how it depicts him to be a true prophet. Nothing, he never said that he was a false prophet. So we are to assume the fact that it says he's a prophet, it means that he had the gift of prophecy. Right? Agabus, Acts 21 verse 10. Right? Titus 1 verse 10 to 12, Paul spoke of a certain prophet that is of the circumcision. So even though they are of the circumcision, and you know, persons who are of the circumcision believe that circumcision is required for salvation, then so to speak. But irrespective of this, Paul likened one of their own to be a prophet. Right? He never said that they are a false prophet, you know. Paul said that a prophet among themselves. Right? Basically called certain Christians liars, evil beasts, and slow bellies. Right? I'm going to give you some more instances of prophets in the Bible. Acts 11 verse 27. In these days came prophets from Jerusalem unto Antioch. Right? Acts 13 verse 1 lets us know that Barnabas and Simeon that was called Niger, it actually tells us that they were prophets. Right? Judas and Silas, right, are basically prophets. Acts 15 verse 32. And I think that's about it. These are prophets that are basically called by name. There are even more. I'm going to give you more texts. Right? Like take for instance, 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 29. It says, let the prophets speak 2 or 3 and let the other judge. In Acts chapter 14, you know, Paul was basically talking about the gift of tongues, how to use it in the church. And coupled with that, he spoke about the gifts of prophecy, prophets then so to speak, that 2 or 3 should speak, no more than that, and let another person judge what the prophet is actually saying. And notice Paul said, you know, that another person should be there to judge. Yes, you are to judge always what a prophet says. You understand? And square it up with the word of God and the things of God in order to see if it contradicts or not. You have to take what the prophet say and judge then, so to speak, in order to determine if it's from God or not. Right? 1 Corinthians 12 verse 28 to 29, it tells us that apostles were set in the church, and then secondarily prophets were set in the church by God. And notice the context is church, you know, and God had set some in the church. So in the apostolic era, God has placed prophets in the church, right? He set apostles there, he set prophets, he set teachers, right? He gave persons miracles, gifts of healing, helps, government, and diversities of tongues. Now if you say by this that this text is saying it's just for the apostolic era, then you have to say that teachers as well are also just for the apostolic era. You have to be consistent with the text. If you're not going to be consistent with the text, don't look at take 1 Corinthians 12 verse 28 and say that, oh, these are just for the apostolic era, because then your argument would be inconsistent, because you have to say that the gift of teaching, teachers was only meant for the apostolic era. Right? Here the question asks, are all apostles, are all prophets, are all teachers, are all workers of miracles? Rhetorical questions being asked. Answer is no. Right? Answer is no. Everyone have different gifts. So based off reading this, one can conclude from just these texts alone that all of those texts are meant to be carried forth, not just in the apostolic era of the church, but right throughout time. Unless you say that teachers is only meant for the apostolic era. And I doubt you'll say that, because if there is no teacher, we are all doomed. Honest to God, if there are no more teachers, no more persons who are able to teach the word of God, we are all doomed. And hey, I'm sure you'll classify your boy, Kismar of all things religious, to be a teacher, right? I think I'm an evidence that these gifts supposed to continue, because I'm teaching, right? So at least you can testify from me that the gift of teaching still continue, right? But if you say yes to this, you have to take the other things that are said in the same text in order to be consistent. Now, so we know from the book of Acts, and from 1 Corinthians, that the gifts of prophecy, it was in the church, right? And we find no justification so far to say that it was limited to the church, right? Peter spoke about false prophets that were among the brethren, 2 Peter 2 verse 1, right? Where else does it talk about false prophets? There were false prophets among them. So while there were true prophets in the apostolic era, there were also false prophets in the apostolic era, right? Just give me a second, guys. So, and there's a false prophet named Bar Jesus too as well. So here they called out a false prophet. Oh, I think I mentioned that already. I'll put the text on the screen. Sorry about that, guys. So we see that there were false prophets and there were true prophets in the apostolic era, right? In order to be consistent, you can't acknowledge that. You can't say that yes, there are false prophets in this era, right? And don't accept the likelihood of true prophets being in this era as well. Because just as how there were false prophets and true prophets, both mingling in the apostolic era, you shouldn't find it hard to accept that in the same way, we should find, if we see false prophet, we should find true prophets as well, mingling in our era also. You get the point that I'm making, guys? Now, let me show you something here. I'm going to read a text to you from 1 John 4 verse 1. This is what John says. Beloved, believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Now, let's think now. You know, I like to challenge my viewers to use critical thinking skills. If there was never to be any true prophet in throughout the end of time, then so to speak, wouldn't that be easier for John to say that believe no prophet, for there'll be no more false prophet, there'll be no more prophets for the end of time? Wouldn't that be easier to say? The minute John is going to say that you should test, you know, right? Because many false prophets is gone out into the world. John is telling you, test to see if it's a false prophet or not. Test to see if it's a false prophet or if it's a true prophet. It can't get any more simpler than that, guys. It can't get any more simpler than that. And when you read 1 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 37, this is what Paul says. If any man think himself to be a prophet or spiritual, let him acknowledge that the things that I write unto you are the commandments of the Lord. And I find it interesting, you know, that Paul would say something like this, because one of the things that I have seen where false prophet is concerned, you know, their main target to downplay is oftentimes the New Testament. You see, Satan knows, you know, right? Due to he knows that we are no longer under the old covenant anymore, you know. Just as how Satan knows that there is one God and he trembles, Satan's knows doctrine, Satan knows the truth, and its target is not the Old Testament. His target is the New Testament. Sad to say that my old covenant believers that have been contended with for ever so long, poor souls don't really get it. That Satan himself knows that they're dabbling with something that doesn't continue anymore. So you notice what Paul says? They must acknowledge that the things that I say are the commandments of the Lord, because false prophets especially always try to downplay the writings of Paul. Hebrew Israelites especially, they hate Paul with their entire being. The main target is Paul, because Paul was the apostle to the Gentiles. He was the apostle for me and for you. So their main target is the writings of Paul. And so that is why Paul says the prophet must acknowledge the things that I write. So any false prophets, sent by Satan, hardly have any need, to dabble with Old Testament, Yeah, they'll try to chuck Old Testament and use the Old Testament to cancel out the New Testament, Cancel out what Paul writes. That is the devil's motive, He's never going to try. He's never going to try, and what he wants is to downplay the New Testament and magnify the Old Testament. Satan doesn't want to downplay the Old Testament and magnify the New Testament. No, he doesn't want Paul writing to be acknowledged. Right, guys? So this is something for you to think about. The last thing that I'm going to say, right? Because you have seen so far, that the gifts of prophecy and is supposed to continue. Namely, too, from Acts 14 verse 11, he gave some apostles, that is Christ, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors, and some to be teachers. You can't take teachers, pastors, evangelists, right, and leave out prophets and leave out apostles too, but that's for another video. You understand? That's for another video. You can't take 3 and leave out 2 of them. No, that would be inconsistent, right? But you see, I have to sympathize, right, with a lot of persons who have felt the sting of false prophets and felt the sting of false apostles. I can really sympathize with them, right, because they have caused a lot of damage, because these 2 gifts, are gifts that puts authority on people more than anything else. Because in truth and in fact, a prophet, has way more authority than a teacher, evangelist, and pastor. Way more, because a person can solidify their message by simply saying they are a prophet, because it's like once you say you're a prophet, you're saying that God is speaking through me. Therefore, if God is telling me, you must obey what God is saying. And so nothing is quicker to solidify a false message than to say you're a prophet, or worse, an apostle, which is an even higher office than prophets. You understand, guys? And so people have felt the sting of them both. And so as a result of that, because it's easy to challenge a pastor, much easier to challenge an evangelist, much easier to challenge a teacher and so forth. But people find it harder to challenge a prophet or an apostle. Right? If I should come and say I'm an apostle, maybe all things religious would have gone skyrocket faster, because people are quicker to believe in those persons. You understand? So, irrespective of what you've been through, remove the bias from your eyes and take the writings of the New Testament for what it is actually saying. Before I close, I'm going to look at the number 1 text that cessation is used to say that there will be no more prophets for the end of time. Hebrews 1 verse 1 to 2. God, who at sundry times and in diverse manners spake in times past unto the fathers by the prophets. And the other verse, sorry, I lost the text, guys. The other verse says that he hath in these last days spoken unto us by his Son, right? Whom he hath appointed heir of all things, by whom also he made the worlds. that even Philip's daughters were also prophets or prophetess. Right, guys? So this is evidence for you that the text cannot be interpreted to mean that Jesus was supposed to be the last prophet. What it means logically is that Jesus is the most authoritative he's the most authoritative prophet that we have ever received, and there will be none that is more authoritative than him. So every prophet, right, that should follow after him should be subject to what Jesus said out of his own mouth and what he have revealed, right? What he have spoken through the apostles. So any prophet that should come after, whatever they say, must line up with the apostles of the New Testament. This is a far better way to actually interpret the text, right? So with that being said, I would love to know your thoughts about on this video. Whether you believe I connected the dots perfectly, if I'm actually making sense, right? My stance is that I believe that the gift of prophecy should continue throughout the apostolic, throughout our time. But what we should do is actually test every prophet. Everyone who says they're a prophet, we ought to test them just as John said. Now, many persons believe that it was Paul who wrote the book of Hebrews, right? And we know that John is an apostle that lived long after Paul. So it's highly likely that John's epistle are actually older than the book of Hebrews. It's likely that it's older than the book of Hebrews. And if John was saying this at the time in which it was written, long after every one of the apostles would have died, most of them would have died out, leaving back John, how can we not think that there should still be prophets existing in our day? But how do we test them? Deuteronomy tells us that whatever they say, it must come true. Right? It must come true. This is how you actually know whether a prophet is real or not. And not only must it come true, but anything that they teach, it must contradict Paul, what Paul says, as I would have shown before. Right? It must not contradict the word of God in general. Once they contradict the word of God, once the thing that they say don't come true, we can automatically write them off from there and say that they are not a true prophet. Right? So with that being said, I end this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, and share this video. Bye bye now.